I knew I was going to be having a show here, and I knew that there was going to be another artist showing who had more of a three-dimensional work, and I thought, well, I sure would like to show with Steve Parmelee. I've always been such a fan of his work, and when I decided to approach Steve and see if he would have any interest, and I approached the gallery too, and it happened, and it's been a thrill to get to know Steve a little bit more and to visit each other's studios, and I had no doubt in my mind that the work was going to be cohesive. I felt like there were a lot of, certainly some references to similar objects and similar time periods, but moreover also humor and maybe a little bit of heartbreak, some sort of aching nostalgia, but also just general playfulness and silliness with retro objects.
Yeah, a little twisted humor. Kind of an irreverence towards the subject matter. Not irreverence, but taking chances with the unexpected. Not the usual subject matter that you'd see. Some surprises, I think, when you walk around that makes it interesting.
Well, I would like to hear more about how you got started making your objects.
I was collecting long before I started making art, or even knowing I could make art with objects, and maybe 10 years of like estate sales, just collecting things that interest me, usually small things, but of a certain era. You can see in my work that it's all older than me, usually. And then I found an artist that made assemblage, and I didn't even know the word before, and he did an online class, and I took that, and that was a gift from Melissa, and then that was a Christmas gift, and then by that February I made my first piece. That was 10 years ago. This is my anniversary, yeah. And then it just kind of took off. I made them for myself, for our walls. I had no intention of selling them off, until I had too many to keep around the house. And then, yes, the collecting started gearing more towards art, which I didn't, before that, I didn't have that eye for it. I just collected what I liked. But then I started collecting raw materials that I needed to build the stuff.
Yeah, on your website, there's some amazing photos of you in your studio, surrounded by many of the objects you found.
Yes, my happy place. Yes.
It's impressive.
Yeah, and it's hard to keep it from getting crowded. You can fill up as much space as you have, so I'm at that limit. Yeah. I got to visit Julie's studio and home, which also has things that I love just around the house. So I immediately knew that this would be a fun, interesting show. And I got to see her paintings in process, like the tumbleweed, and other things that just sparked ideas for me to do with her. You'll see some of her work has vacuums, so I wanted to do a vacuum piece, and the Jello, I wanted to do a Jello mold piece. So it just sparked. She didn't tell me to do that, and I wanted a nice, fun, cohesive show, and I think it worked. There's some nods like the Pennzoil cans that I think if you walked around you'd say you put those together, and those connections is kind of what makes this show, I think, unique and fun.
Well, and when I visited your studio, there was a lot of objects where I was like, oh, I want that. Oh, I want that. Oh, that thing's cool. Oh, wow, he's got a bunch of those. And it was like, Steve has like shelves that have similar items on it, and even some of them with the figurines. It's like all the figurines are kind of turned and like looking towards you, and it's like Steve.
Creepy.
Steve is like he's like decorating with these things. Like he's already interacting with them before they are even part of a sculpture, and it was a real treat to me. I mean, my method of working is very different from his, but it was a real treat to see how he is already having these interactions with pieces before they're pieces.
I'd argue that the process is different in that way, because I look at your work and I see things that are kind of playing with each other, especially the vacuum. There's a shop vac over there that's kind of hiding, lurking with the hose, almost like an octopus in its recess. So I think there is some play. Like on my shelves, there is little stories going on. I put people together, and they're not. I don't like have conversations out loud. I'm not crazy, but there's play in making them. It's putting things together, like that guitar and the girl looking up at it. It was kind of playing on my workbench. It was just making like little doll sets, kind of. Same with the two faces over there. It was kind of accidental. It was an anatomical model where the head came apart, you could see the brain. But I actually had them kind of nose to nose, and I just noticed that it looked like they're kind of nuzzling, kind of a thing. So it was an accidental, just because my studio's so messy that the play and things that shouldn't be together come together. That's kind of fun. And speaking of subject matter, vacuums and Jell-O and
well, a lot of the imagery that I paint does come from photographs, and sometimes, like the Jell-O mold back here, I copied that out of this Jack and Mary's Jell-O recipe book, and I go to antique stores and junk stores a lot, and I was looking through this recipe book, and here's the picture, and it was so beautiful to me, and I can't really explain why. It is something about the printed material from this time period, and whoever the photographer was. I think these are hand painted. This is from the 30s. These hand painted photographs. There's a quality to them that I'm always inspired by with paint. I love color, but I'm very, very particular about how the colors are interacting with each other. And some of these recipe pictures, I just thought, it's just, the photograph is already a masterpiece. There's nothing that needs to be changed about it. It just needs to be bigger. It needs to be a painting. And so I made it into a painting. But, there's something kind of slightly sinister about the glowing red Jell-O. And it was almost like I could see some kind of crazy demons in there somewhere. And people are like, oh, Julie must love Jell-O, and I'm like, actually, I never have, as a kid, and if somebody gave me Jell-O, I'd be like, oh, I don't like Jell-O, but there's something about the absurd about the Jell-O mold and all the lined up spoons and everything. To me, it's not the kind of house I grew up in, but it's something that I think I recognize immediately as a kind of American experience that a lot of people have a memory to associate with. And so can't really say what it is about it, but that one for sure. The vacuum cleaners, the shop vac that you're talking about was kind of the first vacuum cleaner painting. And my husband and I were out in the garage, and he looked over at the vacuum and he's like, oh, the vacuum looks like it's either getting ready to come out of that corner or sneaking back into it. And we laughed about it, and I thought, yeah, I'm just gonna take an easel out in the garage and I'm gonna paint the vacuum. It's cracking me up. So I did, and then this lady vacuuming her dog, had to do that. And this is definitely taken from this user's manual here, Electrolux and how to use it. And this is from 1934, and this is the picture here. She's vacuuming her dog, but the dog, I didn't have to change anything about the dog's face. The dog is very wary, but in this magazine, she's so happy. But I wanted her to be in kind of like a cleaning frenzy sort of mode. So again, the photo was already a masterpiece, but it just needed to be appreciated by more people. She's also vacuuming her hair in this user's manual. So I don't know. It's just completely absurd to me, and I think that's what appeals to me the most about it.
Again, a similarity, I think, in our subject matter is not really caring what the market would want or expects, and just being like, I want to do this. Kind of, there's that petulance to both of us that we're like, I did it because I want to, and the people who look at it and say, why would you do that? We don't really care. But on the flip side of that, we do love when people do look at it and go, oh my God, that's a great connection. That's offbeat or get it. Yeah.
I think that this painting over here is a perfect example of me for that. And I brought this in because this is a very sentimental one to me. This is a photograph of a county fair baking display, and my grandmother made something in this display, and I've been looking at this photograph for years. It came out of my grandparents' basement, and I just like, gosh, it's so bleak. It looks like a concentration camp or something. It's just awful. But I love it, I'm like, it's got to be a bigger painting. I just got to like dive into this thing and like really sink my teeth into it. But I don't know why anybody would want this in their house. But that doesn't matter, it just had to be done. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of those that are collecting that I just wanted in the world. I just wanted to make them, and I didn't know they wouldn't sell, but I just wanted to have them made. Yeah, more personal.
Well, you have a lot. One of the things that I've always liked about your work is this juxtaposition of sweet and kind of scary sometimes.
Likewise, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah. There's. I do have probably both those sides, but I do like to make a story in my piece. If I don't, I feel like kind of let down. I don't want to say badmouth any of my pieces, but like a bouquet of flowers that doesn't have a story, but it's cool, it's fun, it's neat, it shows really cool things. But if I'm making it and it doesn't have like more layers to it, doesn't have the dark and the light kind of playing off each other, I kind of lose interest. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like even the bubble gum display there. In my mind, it was a light piece. It was funny. Old figurines blowing bubblegum bubbles, but because they're kind of ghostly, they're kind of white, it kind of has a little undead kind of feel to it.
Uh-huh. Yeah. That one is one of my favorites of this particular grouping that you have, and I was curious as to how you came up with, like, how is it a contest, bubblegum contest?
Yeah, well, you've got
some
a
are bigger
saint
than others, I
and,
guess.
and Aristotle and Mother Magdalene, and I like the just the span of eras that they come from, and kitsch, there's a little kitsch in there too that I had to do.
One thing I really like about that one too is when I was in my early 20s, and I've always loved to decorate, I've always been a collector, but I was a young girl living with a bunch of roommates, and I had started collecting these white porcelain figurines, and it didn't matter what they were of. And my collection grew and grew, and had kind of like moved out into the hallway of our rented place, and I had them like smashed in there on this table, and then I was like, started getting into meat grinders too, and I started like putting these meat grinders around the rim, and like, and my roommates, they're like, Julie and her stuff, and then one of them was like, listen, Julie, can you move that thing into your room? Like, it's totally creepy. I was like, well, okay, I guess. But just the fact that Steve had like this collection that is so reminiscent of what I had collected years ago. It's like, oh, thank goodness, at least somebody on the planet understands.
Yeah. No, when Julie approached me, I jumped on the chance of doing this show, and I'm really grateful for BAC to host it, and to Karen for putting this kind of really inspired assemblage of work the way she lays it out. If you haven't walked around and experienced it, she just did a really great job at display.
When I was a kid, I grew up in Fort Collins, Colorado, and my aunt and uncle lived in Burns, Wyoming, which you've probably never heard of. But we spent a lot of time driving back and forth between the two. And there were a lot of late nights going back from the ranch to Fort Collins. And we'd be driving in the dark, and the headlights would illuminate these tumbleweeds blowing across the road. And my brother and I just thought it was hysterical. And you'd see them piled up on the barbed wire fences, and we'd constantly on the lookout for the tumbleweeds. And I've always been interested in them, I guess. I've always had that picture in my head of them rolling around, illuminated by car headlights. And so I started this painting a long time ago, and it was small, and I would tortuously try to get in there and keep all the lines really crisp, and I couldn't do it, so I scrapped it and started over on a bigger piece. And it's tedious. I don't know if you know that, but keeping everything so crisp like that is really tedious, so I would get real sick of it, and I'd stop working on it and start up again, and decide I didn't like a part of it, and I'd sand it off and start over. This tumbleweeds really tortured me. Anybody who's here who's known me for years knows that this one's been in my life a long time. I'm really happy to have it done, and it is kind of like an imaginary thing. I didn't really reference a tumbleweed. I just kind of went with my feeling of a tumbleweed. I wanted it to be somewhat kind of like have a personality, and I think if you turn it different ways, it does have a different personality. It looks kind of like a bug some ways, or certain lines stick out, so it could be hung any number of ways, but I thought that this one, hanging it this way, looked like I wanted it to, I guess. I decided this was upright. There are a couple of mistakes in there too, because the thorns on each branch are pointing towards the end, but there's a couple of them that I messed up. And if you had the time and were insane enough, you could find them in there.
Oh, it's like a maze, or trying to follow the line. Also, I think it was the Sam that saw top of a tree, like a top view, looking down. You can see the.
I can see that.
And I love the frame, Old West with that. Is that a Paul?
It is,
creation?
yeah. My husband has very, very nicely made a few frames for me for this show. Any of the ones that are like gorgeous wooden frames are all made by Paul.
This is your family piece, but you also have a box of photos from an estate sale. I think you showed me.
Yeah.
And some of the artwork over there is from that box, and I thought it was fascinating and worth talking about. That you didn't know the person, or people, but you've gone through those photos and are just fascinated with that life that you didn't know, and then that you paint a lot of.
Yeah. There's some photographs of some people who their estate was acquired by a local antique dealer in our town, and I kind of fell in love with this couple, and I've kind of have taken all of their photographs into my possession because they're so strange, and I kind of feel like I want to just protect them and keep them safe, and I am very fascinated with them aesthetically, so almost for my own self, I have painted some of their portraits because I just love the pictures so much. And I do know a little bit about them, but in an effort to protect their anonymity, I won't go into what I know. But the lady and the man who are crouching behind shrubs, those are them. And perhaps you'll see more of them in the future. I have some more paintings of them.
It's a big box of photos.
Yeah.
I rarely sit and start a piece and finish it that day. or that year. Some have languished for, I don't want to guess, 8, 10 years. But I can't see one around here. But I do have a slow process because sometimes I can't find that one piece for the center. But I know what I want, but I just have to find it. So it's kind of hunting for it and setting that on a shelf. I've about 10 going at a time because I'll get stuck, and my process is bouncing around. And like the tumbleweed, coming back to, and sometimes it really helps to let it marinate, have that in the background as you're working on other things or just going about life, and coming back to it and seeing it with fresh eyes helps. And sometimes they just languish, and I just, like a vulture, take pieces off the pile. Yeah. Yes.
Did we see assemblages that you picked up stuff from Rotary the week before and would have these
Love it.
incredible, the biggest raw material thing you could
Yeah.
possibly find?
Yeah, if you know the Bainbridge Rotary Sale, it's massive. It's an experience, and it's a great source for me. And they've been very kind to me. They gave me a tent one year to assemble stuff I got that week and then sell it at auction at the sale. It was great. I love it, and my kids work it now, pushing the carts around, and it's great for the community. It's recycling. But also you get some really cool, weird stuff. Yeah, that's a gold mine, and I miss it. It's been a couple years since we've done that.
I tried to do it alla prima, as they say in the art world, all at once. So I think it was maybe about an hour or so that I sat out there and painted it, but then I kept poking at it a little bit here and there. But I tried to stop, because there's something about the looseness of the painting these tools out in the garage in kind of a loose, quick, choppy manner that to me really appeals to me. So, yeah. The yellow painting of the sunflowers in the Pennzoil can is kind of the third iteration of a series that I started years ago that are kind of like a monochromatic still life. And that one started first with a canvas that my husband made with kind of like a yellow hardwood. And then I applied a series of texture mediums to the surface to kind of create, kind of looks like an adobe wall kind of a texture. And you can see it if you get up close. There's all this little tiny texture, but the way that I paint in layers is, it makes the painting very flat. So I wanted some sort of a textural interest to it. So that's why I put that texture on there. But then I set up the still life, and all I had of the still life that I could paint from was the tablecloth, the Pennzoil can, and the rubber chicken. And the rest of it I made up in my own head. And I start kind of with the background and work to the foreground. Yellow is a very difficult pigment. It's very transparent. And so, let's say if you paint something, black, and then you go, oh, and I decide I want that to be yellow. You can't just take yellow and put it over the black. You have to get rid of all the black. You have to sand it off, and then you have to paint white over it or paint gesso, and then you can go back in with the yellow. So I had it very, very figured out from the very beginning. Lots of drawing, lots of planning, and then kind of just very carefully painting the yellow. And if there was like a cookie crumb or a cat hair or, just kind of a tiny smudge from my hand, you have to sand that, put white over it, and then put the yellow down, and you probably have to put another coat of the yellow, maybe another coat of the yellow in order to get it to be that bright. So that painting was arguably the most challenging painting that I've done, and halfway through it, I thought, I am squandering my time. What am I doing? I'm crazy. Why am I doing this? Especially the tablecloth, because I did every little stitch. I had to paint it 7 times, every little stitch 7 times to get that color build up the way that I wanted it. And my husband would come home from work and he'd be like, oh, you've been painting all day? And I'm like, yeah. Where? I'm like, this little tiny 2-inch spot. It's done now, So. And the worst part was that varnishing the painting is my least favorite part. It's terrifying to do because you put the varnish on and it looks awful and you just have to walk away and not look at it for a few minutes. Then you go back and you see that you missed a spot and you have to do it again. But I decided I wanted to use a satin varnish, and then I would lose, if I used the satin varnish, then the metallic gold in the background would no longer be metallic. So after I varnished it, I had to come back with the metallic paint and go over all the things that were metallic again, just to get that secondary sheen. So that painting was a lot of work, and I'm really, it's one of the things that I am proud that I've done in my life, is that I finished that painting and just stuck with it even the days that I felt like I was really squandering my time.
If you haven't spent any time with it, make sure you do. Like she said, the tapestry at the bottom, but also the wallpaper in the back, all your imagination.
Yeah.
It wasn't a real wallpaper, and the flowers, just, yeah, it's worth getting close on it, but also just so spectacular from afar too. It's just
well, I think there's kind of like a kind of an optical illusion quality to it that really wasn't planned out, but I think I decided that the background shouldn't have a shadow, that I would make it really flat and totally bright with no variation in lighting, I guess. And I think that it kind of brings it forward. And I've accentuated some of the shadows in the flowers to kind of make them really, really round and kind of amoebic, and that's what I wanted them to do. And I think that it kind of it makes it a little trippy and psychedelic.
and it's so insane that you don't even notice there's a rubber chicken. And there's rubber chicken. But I do that on purpose. Like it's just so overwhelming that you would miss something so funny.
Yeah, I wanted that. I wanted it to be like in your face, and that the object on the table in this series of still lives, there's one object that's the same color as everything else, but that sets the mood that I want, I guess. And so when I was trying to figure out what yellow object I was going to put on, I thought, well, obviously you can put a banana or like a lemon, or there was a couple other things. Like I was like, ooh, what about like a yellow stapler? I was like, I don't know, but when I thought of the rubber chicken, and that was it. That was what I needed, so, yeah.
And I noticed, if you look in some of her paintings, she has some of her paintings in those paintings. And very
Yeah.
fun.
Why not, if you can,
I'm waiting for the painting and the painting and the painting.
Do you ever feel like you overwork a piece?
Oh my God, yeah. It's so hard to let, and it's always the really, like the light bulb one that just has 3 elements. So just let that go and just not start adding to it. Diane's nodding over there. Yeah, it's hard to just stop. I imagine with painting too.
Yeah.
Just say, I'm done. That's the hardest thing.
Yeah, I think sometimes people are like, oh, you must have so much fun in the studio. You must just like go into the studio and you're like, I don't know what's going to happen today. And I'm like, no, it's like I've been planning this painting out for years, and I know exactly what I'm going to do. It's like I'm going to pull out my tiny brush and I'm going to go like this. And then tomorrow I'm going to do that too,
Yeah. No, there's that moment of playfulness, and then there's and actually I do enjoy the construction. And the engineering of that construction. It's fun. It's to a point. But when it gets tedious, like applying those fruit to that tree, or like Julie's saying about those petals, or each piece of stitch, there's some dedication there. Yeah.
I was talking to you earlier about how when you find something like, let's say, a trophy, and you disassemble it to repurpose it into something else, and you take like a grinder and you cut off parts of the trophy, like for me, it's hard for me not to animate something. So if I were to have like a person bowling or something, and I was like, well, it's time for me to cut your torso in half and cut that arm off, is that like
put babies through a bandsaw, and I mean doll babies, not real babies, but it's hard to take your head out of that. It's a little twisted. I carry a sketchbook, and I come up with ideas, and then I go look for the stuff. But also, half the time, I find this cool thing, and I'm like, I gotta make a heart out of a Harley Davidson gas can. Or just because I see that it's a heart shape when it's cut in half, then I have to make it. Yeah, it's still about half and half. Yeah.
Have you had any frustrations with your partway through, but you can't find, it needs?
Yeah, and it creates a problem if it's not the right color, because or the right shape, or the right size, and I'll bring all these different things, and none of them are just right. But I'll set it aside, and it's back there, and then I'm at an antique store, and there it is, like magic. It'll appear. It'll take years sometimes, but that hunt is fun.
Do you have a drop box in Brotherton?
Oh my God, yes. Did anyone bring any stuff? No, I do. I do find stuff on my front porch, and people are very kind, and usually they get it. They like what shows up is like, all right, you understand. You found that in your basement, and that's it. You nailed it. Yeah.
Steve, I was wondering if you have any comments, anything you'd like to say about your work, Americanos, on the wall?
Yeah, that was, there was a lot going on, anti-immigrant. This was just a couple years ago. Politically, I just wanted to make a statement about welcoming, and that's why the Statue of Liberty's on top, and there's an American flag hanging there, and I'm pretty proud of that piece. Just I don't go out of my way to make statements like that, but sometimes I'm
It really grabbed me.
Oh,
But,
good,
yeah, I couldn't
good.
quite say why. That was your thoughts.
Yeah, there was a lot of kind of emotion behind it, maybe. Thanks. Anything else? Any other particular pieces of Julie's that you're wondering about the genesis of, or how did you put it together, Steve? Or
We did have somebody come in the other day and saw your Pennzoil can bouquet and saw Julie's painting of the bouquet and wanted to know which came first, and I don't know.
well, we're funded by Pennzoil.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. Sure, her painting.
Yeah.
Absolutely, her painting. And of course, I have a bunch of oil cans in my basement. But she, like when I'm at her studio visiting, she's like, here. And she didn't say do something with it, but I knew I wanted to. And I actually knew it was going to be a nod to her bouquet, so I made a bouquet of that. Yeah, it was fun, and it was a nod to her piece that I'm just adore, and for the show. I thought it would be fun for the audience.
Steve, didn't you make this piece before? And this is also a pencil.
That's a
Or I.
no. The Pennzoil can is what's holding it up, and it just happens to be Pennzoil, but kind of kismet that it happened to be Pennzoil. It could have been a plain can. The piece was made over the past year, but the can was an addition this week. Actually, I just needed something to stick it in, and I thought it would be fun to tie in the Pennzoil, and it makes the color of it. I mean, if you haven't, the flames that it creates in the bottom, the red and yellow in the rust, that's a great can. That was a scrapyard find last summer.
So this is another one of the grandparents' basement photo finds, and I'm sure my grandpa took a picture of these ladies. He was kind of the photographer in our family, and I just was really taken by the colors in the picture, the kind of yellow, navy, and light kind of mint green. I thought it was beautiful, and the looks on their faces, they just hit the right note for me. And that was one of those where I was like, I just have to paint this. I don't know if anybody's going to understand, but I don't care. I just got to paint these ladies. And people might be wondering what they're doing and what they're up to. That's not for me to say. But I will tell you that the lady with the hair, her left arm was a real struggle for me. And this happens every once in a while with a painting where I have a real hard time with a certain part of the painting. And the painting was almost done, and just her arm, I just couldn't get it right. And I kind of like used my own arm as a model, and I painted my own arm on her, and it looked like this interloper alien arm, and I kept sanding it off and starting over, and finally, like, the painting got so built up in that area that I had to start over. And I don't start over on paintings very often. I started over on this one, and I started over on those ladies, and that was a really hard day where I just stood up and just felt like I was going to barf a little bit, and just like, I have to start this one over. But I did, and I'm glad, and I asked one of my other friends to model her arm. And so one of my friend's arms is now on her, and it's much better. Yeah. But I don't know, there's something about the looks on their faces that was really, I felt like it was expressing something that I needed to say, or they needed to say, I don't know. I just feel like they're wearing matching outfits. They're up to something that maybe it wasn't their idea, and one of them is happy with it and having a good time, and the other one is not. I have worked as a server in restaurants for many years, so there's maybe a part of that is in response to being, somebody who's dressed up and on display and answering questions and bringing people things that they need, and it's a job that I've done for a long time, and I like it still, and I'm still doing it, and it's a career that I can speak to, and perhaps they can too, I don't know. I am always looking for frames, much like Steve, junk shopping. I'm always doing that, always finding things I like, and there are frames all over our house, under every bed, in every closet, and sometimes I'll make a painting just for a frame. I'll say, oh, yes, this idea will go in that frame. I have the inventory always in my head. But sometimes I'll finish so yeah, the size of the frame is very important, and I stretch my own canvases and prime my own canvases, so I can always work out the size to make sure it fits. But some of the frames I added velvet to, or some of them I've restored too. So I've learned quite a bit about, filling frames and gilding frames and antiquing frames and scraping velvet off and putting fresh velvet on. And I like frames a lot. I love to decorate. In our house, we have a lot of decorations, a lot of frames, and it's the best part for the artist, I think, the painter, when you are done with your painting and then you get to put the frame on it and you look at it in the frame and you go, oh, I'm so happy for you now. You have your fresh outfit on, and now you can go out in the world. But I realize that sometimes a plastic Baroque frame is not exactly what people want in their house, but it's what the painting wanted, in my mind. That is definitely the Sapp Brothers truck stop outside of Burns, Wyoming. That's my memories of that. And the frame also is kind of reflective of that, and maybe a little bit of Pee-wee's Playhouse, which has always been an inspiring drive in my artwork.
There's I just noticed a meticulousness to us that's a little over the top, maybe sometimes, but it serves us too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in some ways I can be very tightly wound and like kind of a neat freak. And I think I like things that are well made. And I feel like a lot of contemporary objects are not made well. And it might be why I am so nostalgic for a past that maybe I didn't even live in. But a lot of the appliances and tools and objects
They don't
from
make them
then.
like
They're so nice, and the frames that my husband made are really nice frames. They're handmade with good wood and joinery, and they're finished nicely. And I am proud of that. I'm proud that we spent the time to make a quality product. And it's. I'm a person who has like a flip phone still. I've never had a smartphone, and I am taken aback a little bit by the amount of scrolling and just the imagery that's coming our way. And as a visual artist who might spend years on a painting, I'm kind of alarmed at how quickly we need something new, and how many images we look at every day, and how many of them are just coming at us. And I don't really feel secure in where art is going, and what will the role of artists be, as there are so many more images constantly, every day, continually coming our way, and our access to them is so easy. But I think I value so much making stuff with my hands and doing it right. But in a way, it is a little bit deflating sometimes, knowing how easy it is to have something right away, whatever you want. I don't know really what I'm trying to say, just that it's an interesting time to be a craftsperson.
Yeah. And again, we're not hyper-focused on the marketing, or we would be doing different, maybe different subject matter, or cranking it out faster than we are meticulous, but we're drawn to do that. And fortunately, there's places like this that will show it and sell it. Otherwise, our house would be filled with our work.
Well, I think for me, like most of my artwork is intended to be somewhat humorous, and I get a lot of humor out of your work too. And so, and I've always been somebody who was kind of a ham, and I love making people laugh. So, I guess that's what I'm hoping to do, is that if I get the chance to show my work, I hope that it will make people laugh, more so than I hope that it will make me a lot of money. It's like I like to poke fun at life.
And in that sense, last night we had an opening here, and I thought it was really successful. And I wasn't thinking sales. I was thinking the reactions that were palpable, just the joy that and gasps and laughs and just the experience of the whole show as a whole, but also each individual piece and the kind of the way you go through, and it's almost like a story. The way it's laid out, it was a really successful night, just by the reactions, and we agreed that it was worth all the work. Yeah.
Well, I think the title of the show, Bygones. I was glad to see that there were just pockets of people standing around talking about, referencing an object that they have a memory about, or there, at one point there were a couple of guys over there talking about the vacuum cleaner salesman that sold their mom a vacuum and which vacuums they had, and I feel like our work does open up conversations about memories, and
Right.
gives people something to talk about. They can all relate to it in some way or another without it being too deep or emotionally invested in something. Do you have a piece at your studio that you're working on right now? Like what's next?
Another musical one is I try to get ready for this a guitar piece. But yeah, how about you? What's on your easel?
Well, there's a couple of them that I want to work on. One is a big painting of a vulture birthday party.
With a cake.
Yeah, a red velvet birthday cake. Yeah.
Dark.
Yeah, it is, but it's really big. So I am maybe going to hold off on that one for a second. But I've got a lifetime worth of ideas. I've got some more recipes that I kind of want to dismember and make into kind of like a mandala of meat recipes. Thought that might be kind of nice.
That's so overdone, though, the mandala.
I know.
I sense another show.
I'm gonna need some of those grinders to tie in. the
Oh,
meat
please,
grinders.
yeah. Yeah.
Cool. No, I think you showed me your sketchbook, and I saw the vultures eating the birthday cake in there. That's cool.
It is. It's cool, but it's gross too. And like the vultures need to be larger than life size just to kind of turn up the gross a little bit.
And the red velvet is so
Yeah.
gory. Yeah, cool. Can't
Yeah.
wait.
Well, it'll probably take me about 5 years. So.
Right. Thank you so much, and thank you, Julie, for thinking of me to do this with you. It saved my life. I was just with COVID, and I was just struggling to get motivated, and this show really got me going again. And thank you to Bainbridge Arts and Crafts too. You guys have been great.
Thank you,
Yeah.
guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Ta-da!
Yay.
Be sure not to miss Bygones, an exhibition featuring artists Julie Reed and Steve Parmelee at Bainbridge Arts and Crafts from November 5th through November 28th.